We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Ken Harrison Edwards here. Councilwoman Sherry Rogers here. Councilman Randy Bowen. Councilwoman Debbie Young here. Councilwoman Herb Curtis. City Manager Nate Stansberry.
Present, sorry.
City Attorney Brian Bailey.
Here.
City Finance Director Susie Johnston.
Here.
Chief Josh Thomas.
Here.
Chief Jimmy Settle.
Excuse.
Building Code Zoning Enforcement Andy Darby.
Excuse. Well, who was it?
Street Commissioner Mike Starrett.
Excuse.
Here.
He's on the
Oh, okay, here, Mike.
Senate Board Director Diaz.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
No.
All right. Starting out under old business, discussion of grass cutting on city-owned land.
I think Herb requested this on the agenda. If you want to reorder it till he's present, I'm fine with that.
We can come back to it.
Okay.
Discussion of dilapidated structures.
Is that Councilwoman Ryder that requested that on the agenda?
Yeah, I did. I was trying to remember, I didn't put it on my, I also have a list of things to do for me. And I forgot to put that on my list. 218 Court, I was wondering about the brush on there, and also, is there a door to that cellar? I don't know, I had, Mr. Nicholson said we might
Why
look
would
at
it
the door, yeah.
Okay.
And he also asked, he couldn't make it, he's still recovering from surgery, illness, Mr. Nicholson is. Asked about the brush on the property, I told him that we would ask.
Yeah, we've been trying to make contact with the Farm and High Tree Service that we hired to do, they're to come back and clean that up after the property was cleaned up. Haven't been able to get a hold of them yet, we called them, that's where we're at. As far as the cellar door, I think we put a piece of plywood over it or
Yeah,
something
he
like
just
that.
wanted.
Not need to pass that
So
along,
I was just kind of speaking for him this evening, because he couldn't be here.
Wow. Sorry.
Was that the only
Remember-
item that you had, Sharon?
As far as dilapidated structures, the only thing else that I had was, I wanted to thank everyone involved for their quick response with the building on the corner. I know that was a volatile situation, that it's kind of a sleeping giant that no one knew anything about, and it was a very swift and prompt response. I thought the press release was very informative. I thought it was very professional. I appreciate everyone's efforts on that. Thank you. And I also had a question about the properties in Kidsonville. There is a house in the center. Are our plans to eventually sell that? Is that property owner interested in either of those lots on either side?
So I guess right now, I've been indicating to people that I'm not looking to sell the one that's closest to the Kidsonville school, just because I'm not sure what's gonna kind of come about. There's a house in between, probably on that list to come down at some point in time. It was burned and damaged. Then you've got the school, and so I don't know if there's any kind of redevelopment potential there for that structure. So at this juncture, I haven't been quick to say, hey, let's sell that and get rid of that. The other lot, we're still in the process of trying to get that buttoned up as far as the deed standpoint, with the owner had some back and forth with them there. So I think at that point, that property, once that becomes available, I'm fine throwing that one up, because I don't see any need for the city to hold on to that any longer.
I was just wondering if that property owner wanted it, you know.
I think from what I understand, if it's worth more than $1,000, we have to publicly auction it. So at that
Oh,
point,
okay, yeah.
That's who, anybody would have bids to it at that point.
Right, oh.
Yeah.
You're right.
The only other way maybe possible around that is if we have a land use agency. I think that there's some provisions there where when you have a property through the land use agency, you kind of grow that up or try to get rid of it. You're supposed to approach those newer budding property owners first about that. So that's the only other explanation I have for it, but we don't have a land use agency at this time. So
Right, right.
Councilman, why did we put gravel over on my street and not grass?
we didn't do that. That was, we believe it to be the neighbor down on the street there. So what I've seen is Mr. Burkhammer or his agents have been out there doing whatever they want to the lot. It's not our lot, right? It's still, we looked into it today because we had another question about it. It looks like it's gone through that sheriff's sale. And the person who put it in is going to acquire it in some form or fashion. So at that point, that's between private property owner and private property owner.
Here, we're on the discussion of totality of structures
Oh, okay,
to catch you up to speed.
thank you.
But we're going to go backwards to discussion of the grass cutting on city-owned lots per your request.
Oh, yeah, well, I talked to Nate on the phone the other day about them and have sent him a couple of cents. I'm having some trouble with them. With the lapid or the grass cutting.
So Mr. Darby's here today. He tagged all those, he's not in here in this room, but he was here at the office today. He
Yeah.
tagged all those houses you sent us.
Oh,
To
good,
give
thank you.
notice, so they'll get notice next week after that period that they get to rectify the situation. As far as our city-owned lots, I'll just say that we've had a couple conversations with KCS, with Epps Planescaping, whatever their company is called. He's been trying to keep our budget down, right? In the spring season, you cut the grass every week to keep up with it. And so he's trying to walk that fine line, keep an eye on them. And so at the beginning of this, he was like, I'm doing it every 2 weeks. And I said, well, during this spring flush, please keep an eye on it. If you think I'll trust your judgment. If you think it's getting too aggressive or growing too fast, we'll cut it again. And we'll pay for that. Hopefully make up for it in a drier August or something like that.
I think it needs to cut every week right now. Well, you see how
Yeah,
fast it's
Some of
growing.
those parks and stuff especially.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna leave it in kind of their judgment at this point, and I think somebody has, if you guys see something there, if you think needs cut, let us know, and we'll try to get them out there.
Did they do the riverbank as well?
No, that was Eagles.
That was nice.
I did that.
Looks nice, 'cause that was really bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they brought an army, thankfully. I was worried about it.
I have a question as you come into town to the right, the property, the bank that goes up to Arnold Cemetery, that I don't know who's responsible for it, but I think that we should maintain it if the state isn't. And there's just a couple of swaths done and the rest is going to seed,
I'm maybe confused on where
Are you
you're
where
at.
the wall is?
right past the wall.
Right past the wall, that little strip of land going up. to
Yes,
Reservoir.
yes, the one
Okay.
side is cut, but the other side is not. And I just think that if we're going to enforce grass issues, we should be an example.
I don't know if it's our property, honestly, it might be, is it
It's
state
the
right
state,
away at
it's
that
probably-
point?
it's-
Yeah.
But it is within the city limits.
Yeah.
And it does lead up to our historic
Yeah, it's not an
cemetery.
issue with that.
And I'm also in agreement, I would like the properties cut weekly until the spring season is over. Thank you.
Moving on, discussion of Parada Paving Company contract for paving streets.
Mike, I don't know if you can hear us or not, but we're talking about the paving contract. From what I understand.
Yeah.
Been in contact with them and they're gonna be here first week of June, right, to start mobilizing and all that stuff.
Yeah, first week of June to the second week of June, we'll get together and we'll go out and spot these areas that we need, and they'll do their milling and stuff.
What we're kind of thinking that to keep the cost low, we're gonna allow them to mill all the streets that we're gonna pave even in the summer months. So like you see out here on Main Street where they've got this scarified pavement, we're gonna have that maybe in 1 to 2 months in some of these neighborhoods. We'll try to get to as fast as we can. That's kind of our working plan, so they don't have to remobilize that machine and charge us more. Are we okay with an arrangement like that, you think?
Say that again, please.
So the example out here on Main Street, right? They brought this machine in and they milled off a section of pavement and left the pavement rough and bumpy at points. This paving contractor is gonna bring in their machine and mill some streets as well for us, because ours have been over paved as well. We're hoping to do all that in one mobilization to keep our costs down. And so they'll come in and mill some of these streets that aren't really slated to be paved until after July 1. So that'll probably put us a month or 2 months with those streets not milled, not paved, rough. Are we okay with that? Living with the PR of having the street like that, or do we need to force them to mobilize twice and cost us more?
As long as the community sees them here and they don't stop at any point and they keep rolling, I think we'll be fine.
No, I think that what he's saying is
I know what he's
those
saying.
streets won't be paid
I
for a
understand
couple of
that, but I'm
months.
saying as long as the public sees that they're here and working and haven't stopped where they're nowhere to be seen or anything in the streets or like that for a month.
Which streets are we planning on doing? That's also.
After they mill them, they'll probably be smoother than what they were before they milled them.
Possibly.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I know, I don't have a list here in front of me, but
No, either, it's a.
Mid Avenue is gonna be one of them.
Lower mid, right?
Yeah, the section, from Montgomery's intersection down to the end there roughly. Mikey, what else are we milling in the summer months? Do you remember?
Yeah, we got Heath Court. We got over on Center Street from the old funeral home right there where, I don't know if everybody remembers the old beach funeral home all the way up to 8th Street and part of 7th Street, also out on Carl. And all of Carl is going to get done out in that area. That's all I can think off the top of my head right now, guys.
Yeah, and I think that's center stuff is springtime, if I remember right, because we didn't get much of Herb's Ward last fall. Okay.
I think as long as we can put out clear communication to the public, what's going to be done and
Yeah.
the fact that it is going to look that way for a little bit and it was a cost savings measure.
How much is that gonna save us, ballpark, do you think?
I guess $5,000 to $10,000 would be my guess.
You might wanna put that in your press release.
And I'll get confirmation on that from
Yeah.
the contractor before we pull that trigger, I guess. $5,000 to $10,000 is a small city street, so you're gonna be trying to.
More flowers.
More flowers.
Is there ever going to be an opportunity to get rid of the blacktop that's on the sidewalk on the bridge? It's just unsafe, has been, and now that I guess the state has come in and milled that, there's chunks of the edge out.
Which,
Second Street.
okay,
This one.
on the side, the actual pavement over the sidewalk?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's blacktop, and the city did it years ago.
It's on our bridge though, right? It's in the state system, right? I can reach out to them about it, see
That
about
would
it.
be wonderful.
That's why I've never, I walk
It
over
looks
it all the time.
bad now,
Yeah.
worse than it did. And I know it was an issue in the winter time with the snow removal and.
Right. Okay. I've always just assumed that was, since the bridge is in the state system on the state highway, they've always indicated to me that we don't have any part in that, right? But maybe they'll say the sidewalk is ours like.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would determine that the sidewalk is part of the structure and it's part of the bridge that. We'll ask, okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Discussion of Mid-Avenue slip.
Okay, we reviewed the slip. Okay, we've got some plans from CNC to get this constructed. I had them bump out the piles a little bit further instead of just doing a straight line across the edge of the road. And I did that to hopefully buy us some goodwill with the property owner, because we're gonna have to negotiate an easement and things of that nature, no matter what we do. And I think it gives us an area to pull off the side of the road and then to keep their cars out of the road and everything else up there. And there was probably some added cost to that, but I don't think it was double the cost or anything like that. One of the big comment that we made, and we haven't gotten, so I've sent that off late last week, they emailed me this morning and said, hey, we'll reply to you sometime this week. They had a drain going from that ditch on the hillside back towards the, where the slip was and over the hill. Mike and I sat down and reviewed that, and we basically said, we don't want to see this drain here, because I think that's the long term, that's the issue, saturating that soil and then sliding off the rock face. So we think we can, either they can put it in the plans, or we'll pull it out and do it ourselves, like we did up on Spring Street, where we had some perforated pipe and put some large rock in there. We think we can kind of just develop a thing, essentially catch that water and keep it rolling. And we can work on the ditch itself to make sure the water keeps flowing downhill instead of turning that water.
Are you talking about going up mid and on the left-hand side?
Yeah,
Okay, well, what about the lady at the foot of the hill who was having the issue with
Williams' house down there, or Turner's.
Turner?
So our guys are working, I mean, that's a separate project, but they're down there this week starting, and they're gonna bury that ditch and bring some direct pipe in.
They'll be starting in the morning, Nate.
Okay, yep. So we'll still send that water down into her, but hopefully catch it better and make it better where we are, easier to take care of.
Okay.
So that's being tied into the Department Highway crossing, it's going over to the West Fork River. So, okay, that's where we stand with that, with the slip. Everybody's okay with that at this point.
I think so.
You can tell them, Nate, that we put in the DI in there last week, tied on to the state's drain line. It's ready to go, so.
Yeah, on Turner's project.
Oh, okay.
Mike and the guys built a concrete box down there over top of the state pipes, and then our pipes will fit in that, and we'll have a new cover on it. So.
I'm sure she's happy that things are getting done.
Hope so.
Yeah. She's
Yes,
got
she-
a while.
I got one thing for in the future, when we're giving people right away to attach to a city street, to be more conscious of the fact of how they should be put in. That's where a lot of that water problem, as you come around the turn, going down the hill, a lot of that water problem is caused by that driveway not being put in properly.
Well, the ditch essentially disappears, right? There's no path for it. It's built on level or something like that.
What's that?
So the ditch essentially disappears at the bottom.
Well, and what you have to do is you have to be at a lower elevation than the road surface before you approach the road surface at some point.
Mhm.
That's just the way that the specs are rated up on, I know on state roads. I don't know if the city has anything like that in writing, but that might be, Brian, might be something you could look into.
Try my best.
But approaches that, because you gotta have a permit to approach, you gotta have certain size pipe, you gotta have the elevation down so the water don't run down the driveway and out onto the road, because that's where you run into a lot of your problems in the winter time as well. There's water running across the road. And that driveway, I'm not trying to isolate that incident, but that's what's causing a lot of that water problem right there, because that driveway wasn't put in correctly. And like I say, I don't even know if we have anything.
I think when we looked at it, someone had come up and surveyed it, and even the property lines themselves were all screwy, as compared to a road. If people had encroached or not encroached,
Right.
we'd encroached, so it was one of those things where just a mess.
If we don't have something, that'd be something to look into for the next 6 or 8 months or year, when we get, a couple minutes of houses and buildings ain't falling down.
45-year-old.
If we could get those approaches, get a methodology to put them in so that they don't cause problems at a later date. Because I know the street department has a time with that right there, especially in the winter. But they gotta solve it heavily, and I think occasionally she gets hit pretty hard across the street with runoff that don't go into the ditch. So that's just a thought about the future.
Okay, approval of overage of architect with Columbia Club.
Sorry, I walked out and didn't give that. Let me run up and get that, or if you want to do something else, and then I'll step up there real quick. We're going to do.
We'll wait on you.
All right.
He can go to the shop and save and get his lunch and be back here for 5 minutes. I said, did you already know what you was gonna get? No. And he walks, he's just like, be back.
I know the Shriners selling their things.
Yeah.
Like,
They have,
what are their times?
Usually right now.
In the evening?
yeah, they're
5 to
there
7.
all day.
Is it 5 to 7? Oh,
Where do you
my
sell?
mom wants them.
I haven't sold any of them yet. Should, but I haven't.
Well, Herb, why didn't you bring some?
Yeah.
I
I
think
didn't know
they're
you wanted
$10 a
I need a
bag.
bag from, I need a bag from my mom. I forgot last week in the truck. Can you bail me out, friend?
See you. Check in the morning.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, she's very patient with me.
Mike lives behind over here. I think he bought 6 or 7 bags of them already. Yeah.
Randy, congratulations on making so much money for the funding. Reason that you doing. That was great.
I think they're doing a presentation tonight or something. I don't know. There's still money coming in.
Oh, that's
That's
wonderful.
nice.
Well,
It is
and
good.
it's sad in a way too, because all these people, so many people affected by that, and that's where a lot of money come from. Fairmont, Clarksburg people, somebody in their family or something, and that tells you how bad the problem is whenever you have that kind of response to it. I'd say it'll be approaching 30,000 by the time they get done this evening, and they're adding it all up. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy how hard I had to work in the background to make it. Yeah,
Hey, Ron,
I cooked.
that's the last thing you did for the community. Enjoy it.
I don't know if it helps or not. But I guess it's
I'm
virtue
sure it
signaling, if nothing else.
I'm sure it does.
It helps people, it helps the people that are involved in it. That's
Yeah.
the most important part, I
Right.
guess. that Gives them out of, as far as the actual solution to the problem, I don't. You know, throw money at it, does anything. But it does help the people that are involved with that's it. That's basically who suffers. I mean,
Right.
people do that, don't suffer, they've been suffering.
Yeah,
And then everybody else is left to suffer for eternity then.
Right.
It's a bad situation.
Well, it raises awareness. And
I think that makes the problem worse. That's my whole point.
you think it makes it
I do,
worse?
yes.
Maybe
Yes, I
people
do. I really do.
would be more apt to reach out to someone.
I think just bringing it up and going, it just magnifies the problem and makes other people aware and they start thinking about it. I really do. But I'm kind of like that.
Since this is a contract, we can go executive session, can we discuss this? I think we need to.
Let me look
since
this.
he's employed by, we can. Would you like to make a motion to move
I'll
into
move to go into executive session to discuss personnel.
Yeah, I don't think he's technically personnel. I don't think he's.
Well, he's
Contract.
contract employee.
Okay.
Is there a second?
What was that? I didn't hear.
Sherry entered a motion to move into executive session to discuss contractor, a contracted employee in reference to the architect with. the
Okay,
corporate-
honey, that's what I was asking, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear it. I don't know why we went to that without.
Are you comfortable with second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Hey, you can go ahead and leave if you want.
session.
Second.
It's been moved and second to exit executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we're on approval of overage of Architect with Columbia Club.
I'm making the recommendation that we approve the $7,200 for payment to Van Nostrand Architects to get us up to current due on that project.
I'll move to approve the $7,200.
Van Nostrand
Van
Architects.
Nostrand Architect.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and second. Any discussion? We'll have voting by roll call.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen.
No.
Councilwoman Debbie Gump.
Yes.
Councilman Herb Curtis.
No.
The mayor votes yes. Motion carries. Next, agreement with Bear Construction on the 4th Street Bridge.
We want to go executive for this as well.
It's
I don't
it's a project with potential pending litigation, so I believe we're
Alright.
within our confines to do that. Do you concur, Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
I'll move to go into the executive session.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to enter executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Who first?
Oh,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
and second. All those in favor say aye.
No,
Opposed?
Debbie.
Motion carries. Okay, and city manager, your recommendation is?
At this point, there is an agreement with Bear Construction, none's been offered, so I asked you to table that at this point.
I move the table.
second.
Any discussion? Okay, voting by roll call.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen,
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie Gump,
Yes.
Councilman Herb Curtis.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next, purchase of street sweeper.
Get from the street department, I don't see no sense in buying one.
Can't get to the street
I'll say
department
table.
if we can.
That's so funny.
It's called reality.
There are alternative routes.
Yes, it's reality.
Herb, I think you requested this. What's your strain of thought on that?
Well, Randy thrown tears out there a little bit. I've been seeing one, I guess you guys have one rented now, and I didn't know there was gonna be action required. I thought we were just discussing this, but because
We can table it.
I haven't even really spoken to you much about it on the phone, but I was gonna put it on here, but I know this come up, and it was in the budget last year. And wanted to get your thought on it at this point as far as a lease or purchase or.
When I got the last model that was roughly $200,000, I submitted that to the leasing company to say, what's our payment look like? It was near $30,000, I think, for a 10-year lease. And all, with all the interest and stuff shook out. I thought that was quite a bit for us, and you're going to end up doing probably $10,000-15,000 of maintenance on it every year, just speculating, right, over the life cycle of it. Something I didn't really find a place in the budget for at this point.
Sure.
My hope was, when I did that, was that maybe we generate about $30,000 in stormwater every year. And I thought with the street sweeper, if we could take half of that money and put it towards a street sweeper cost, and then leave us about 15 grand to do stormwater drain projects with and fix things as we go, that probably realistically could work. I think we could probably put in a lot more pipe than 15 grand a year, but we could at least get done what we need to get done with that. And then hopefully raise that rate at some point down the line, catch up with inflation. But that's about my thoughts on it at this point. I just didn't,
Fair enough.
and we really haven't identified the exact model we wanted yet. We've read 2 different versions. We got this one here that was an upgrade on the first one we rented. We haven't been too pleased with it. It's broken down twice since we've had it. It doesn't suck out the basins as well as we thought it should, and the other one didn't suck out basins very well either. So if you ask me today, I'd say go with the cheaper model and just sweep streets with it and don't suck out catch basins with it, and then approach some kind of partnership with the sanitary board to see if we can get a machine that can do both of those for both catch basins and manholes. Super system. So
I
that's my take.
think it's a start though, as far as our infrastructure and starting from the bottom. I think street sweeper is right there at the bottom waiting to work your way up, as we've discussed before, as far as keeping the streets clean where your stuff isn't going into the drains and drop inlets. Because that's where it starts, is your drainage, and then your roads and sidewalks and on up. So, I mean,
Sure.
just a thought.
I think it's a basic service, right? And so right now, I think we've got enough in the budget. It's about $9,000 we're in it for a month. So that's about $18,000 that we've carved out of our existing general fund budget to rent a machine twice a year for a month each time. I thought last year the side streets weren't too bad. The main thoroughfares got a little bit dirty by the time we had some build up.
Yeah.
I talked to Mayor just a little bit about it today. I said, maybe it's something the rental company we used the second time will only rent to you monthly, but this rental company would do you a weekly rate. Maybe something the weekly rate's like $2,700 a week. Maybe we just do a couple weekly rentals throughout the summer or whatnot, and kind of just bring it in for a week and do the main areas so people are at to kind of get through it. But I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. You've got your big ARPA money out there. I think if you wanted to put a sizable down payment down on the street sweeper, you could.
Right.
Right now we just pay them the fees, and if it breaks down, they come and give us a different one, right? That's kind of nice, yeah. Where if we own one, we're gonna be taking care of all the maintenance and everything, and it's gonna be a cost and time and stuff, so. I don't have a recommendation, I'm just
Yeah,
sharing.
that's fair enough. I was just, thought we'd talk about it a little
Yeah.
more since we've seen it out and about.
I'd like to, throw some couple of ideas out there. First of all, if we do sweep the streets more often, I think there'll be less buildup. Also, there is ARPA funding, and then we could maybe allow in the storm drain budget for repairs. Our citizens and business owners really appreciate the streets being swept and cleaned. I do want to put that out there, but I've had a lot of positives. Actually, I've had a lot of positives about everything lately too. To share that, I shared it before the meeting, but I really wanted to share that.
Let's see where we end up with the catch basin, you know, because we've been tracking that in the general fund, and we're gonna, in June, we're gonna make them, or I guess probably July, actually, we'll go to, I'm gonna give you our list of everything we spent on drains and pipe and all that stuff this year. I'm gonna ask for stormwater fund to reimburse the general fund to make that transfer. We'll have that number, because I think we've been pretty proactive this year with drain. We put a lot of stuff in, we bought structures, we bought things, now that'll kind of give you a rough estimate of what your annual cost is gonna be for drains. And then maybe we look at ARPA and say, what do we gotta get ourselves down to? What's our down payment have to be, right, to make the remaining, you know, out of that 30,000 that we spend on stormwater every year? We spent 20,000 on drains. What do we gotta put down to get to a $10,000 a year payment? Plus you got whatever you got saved up in stormwater that you can always tap into and pull out if you have a bigger project needed or something.
And as you said earlier, it's an extra service.
It
So that
is.
may be a big pillar when we sit across the table from, I won't get into all that,
Yeah.
but for,
Anybody, you know,
for annexation and all.
Right.
if you can't street the sweeps or sweep the streets, what can you do with the city, right?
Right.
Everybody acknowledges that.
Yeah, and you get one medium size, big enough, and does a good enough job, you can do from here to out to Walmart, you know. Just every week, you could be somewhere different and offer that service, and that could be something that we offer within a negotiation.
I have a question. Are there street sweepers that do not require CDLs?
That smaller one, that first unit didn't.
I think that might be a good idea, so more people can operate it at the street department.
The problem with that unit was it didn't have the sucker hose on it, so that's why we went up the next model because it had the sucker vacuum or whatever for basins, but I think now that we've
But it
essentially
didn't-
ruled that out, it doesn't
Yeah.
work. I think
Sure.
we can jump back down.
Why
and
spend
Once you
that much
suck out
money?
those basins and get all those cleaned out, and you keep the streets sweep, you don't need that.
Yeah,
That's actually
exactly.
nice. Yeah,
So it's
But
just
it's
a
a bad
maintenance
cleaning them
thing.
up.
oh, I'm sure.
You know, if we, but, you know, you're talking about payments and a payment, we're still paying interest on that. I mean, we have the money. I mean,
Yeah, it's
just putting that out there.
the ARPA is kind of one of those things, stormwater you can only use for stormwater related things, right?
Right.
So if you want to keep your powder dry and use that ARPA money for other things, that was just my thought, was to say, try to minimize that as much as you could for yourself to use for other aims.
Sure.
My dream was at some point getting one near new, but not new, to get the new price knocked off.
Yeah.
If we own it,
Right.
and it have enough warranty on it for the next 4 to 6, 7 years until we do some annexation or get more revenue coming in. And once that warranty is run off, then we could afford the maintenance and upkeep. Just, that was my
Well,
thought down
that's,
the
you know, I've
line.
never really,
Great.
I've always
idea.
felt like used. I've looked out there and see if anybody offers a used warranty. You know, the warranty usually came with a new unit from what I'd seen, but I really hadn't looked into it. So I'm looking, that's a good strain of thought, you know, there's a balance there, right? When you say,
Because once it's leased but still with a company or a dealer, or whatever, they can't sell it as new, so that new price is not shot,
Sure.
but a warranty could be for 4, 6, 8 years.
Yeah, so like if you get one that you like, say, hey, can you have that? You know,
right, that first unit we had, that was a used unit, that now they told us inside, we've had a lot of problems with this one, so we didn't even think about it.
Right.
So that was 100,000 was what the raw was asking price, but the new one was 180,000. So,
Right.
we could find something that's a couple years old, it would probably make some sense.
Yeah.
Now I'll interject
Okay.
something, I won't be that pleasant. If you got, just say for an instance, United National Bank building, and it didn't work out the way that it did. And they decided to let it sit there and deteriorate. I mean, you got your street sweeper laying on the bank over there at Second Water right now. That much money of it.
Yeah.
And how quick did that happen? 3 or 4 days? Bam, that money's gone. What if that bank building hadn't have been the deal worked out to where there's people gonna, and we got stuck with tearing that down? Or we had another emergency at another house. And that's another point I'd like to make while I'm on that. I think I was against using emergency. They was already in the process of getting that house down and trying to work out the logistics of it. And I think now you see the difference of how was it termed?
Imminent danger.
Imminent danger. Now you know what imminent danger is. That's imminent danger. That up on Court Street wasn't imminent danger. It was already in the process. And I disagreed with that, but I thought I'd share that with you.
Let's stick with street sweeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
I don't want to inject barbs into the situation, but yeah, I mean,
It's over now.
That's
We're just moving
quick.
on.
that's how quick our budget can go, this way to that way.
Yeah.
But you gotta operate, you
take
can't worry about all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
you
You can't just think about that all the time or you won't do nothing.
Right.
But every once in a while, you just need a little shot of what actually can be good to happen. I mean,
Okay, so
got-
at this juncture,
Yeah.
I'll entertain a recommendation at this point to,
Can I ask for, I guess, for a little bit of clarity before we
Yeah.
make a motion?
Sure.
What does council think? Do we want to try to purchase one, or do we just want to continue with the rental?
Yeah.
And I guess if you want to purchase one, I'll just start searching and see.
Not at this, I would like to, but not
I'd like
this point.
to.
I would like for you to give you a chance to do your thing.
I
That's why I
have
said I
mixed
didn't mean for
feelings,
that.
you
to be
know
a
I do.
motion. Yeah.
Okay.
It's fair
So
enough.
the status quo kind of range right now, is that what I'm understanding?
But do you want him to explore the options though? Is that what
Yeah, I
you're
mean-
saying?
But I guess, you know, for lack of better words, I'm gonna keep reading the bulletin board. If something pops up that they're working for us, I'll come to you, right?
I'm looking
I'm not
too.
gonna read the bulletin board for them. I'm
Yeah, I
checking out
know.
commercial truck
I'd like to
trades,
know
so-
what actual maintenance costs are for what you're considering a purchase of, and I'd still like to know how that compares to just renting maybe
That's a good
X number
idea.
of times a
Yeah.
year.
That's a good idea.
I mean, we've had ARPA, we've had good fortune, but we, like Councilman Bowen says, we may not always be able to sustain that, so let's keep it realistic.
I'll move to table the street.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second to table purchase of a street sweeper. Any discussion?
Yes. I just want to reiterate one, in a matter of 3 days. In a matter of 3 days, what was it, 5% of our budget is laying over there on the creek back now. I just want you to realize that.
We haven't spent it yet, but yeah, probably.
Huh?
So we haven't spent it yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, that's how quick things can change. And things aren't working out real good in the world. This ain't a real good world we're living in right now, if you haven't noticed. I mean, if you think otherwise, you're not paying attention. But just like I said, 3 days, 5% of our budget's going. I'll tell you what, though, I will say this. I don't know if it's worth 5% of our budget, but when you drive across that Second Street Bridge and you can see that bank, it's a beautiful sight. It is, it really is. It improved.
Okay, we'll have voting by roll
It
call.
improved the approach, 100% coming to town.
Tabling, for tabling, yeah.
For tabling.
Okay. Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen.
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie
Yes.
Gump. Councilman Herb Curtis.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we're moving on to new business, and since this deals with Lewis County First, in which I'm a member, I'm going to recuse myself, and Vice Mayor Rogers will manage this discussion.
No
Thank
tie,
you.
no tie votes, that's what that is.
Yep, that's what that means.
I'll make the time.
You go ahead and leave.
Yeah. So I think we all have the agreement in front of us, underneath of your agenda. Chance to read that. I haven't.
I guess I'll just give you a little bit of a briefing. I had went
Yeah.
through with it. Brian prepared it, and I guess he maybe had to use the restroom, but
Okay.
The genesis of this is that we've been trying to have this summer concert series inside of the whole property downtown. We had our first event without an agreement, and I think Johnny Goodwin came in and noted, so just to clear that up.
Yeah.
But LC First was fine, you know, they hold a lease on the whole property, maintain it, and things of that nature, and let the public use it. So we were gonna, I don't think sublease is the right term, but come to an agreement that we would mow the property in exchange for access to allow us to have these concerts and events and during this calendar year. And
That both parties have to agree to, right?
yeah, I
Okay.
think so. And so my tack was I was just gonna allow get a quoted price from our mowing contractor and let them know. And keep it up. Like I said, I thought that, and the girls, Anna and Jamie, who've been organizing the concert series for predominantly, they've been trying to fundraise for acts and maintenance of the facility. And so they've, I think, raised over almost $2,000 so far just for that stuff. So I think we have a good chance of just paying for our own costs out of the donations and sponsorship of the concert series itself. So that's where I stand on it. I hope my recommendation is to approve the agreement if you guys.
Okay. Everyone ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the agreement with Lewis County First on the whole property as the terms are defined in the agreement.
Now, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll go by roll call, please.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes. Oh, do I? I don't think I
You
do.
have her hold off till the.
No.
Might be tough.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Randy Bowen,
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie Gump,
Yes.
Councilman Herb Curtis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I got bored.
You're getting ready to say that word. You were.
All right. I don't think we ever got a quote from Mike to do for this roller.
I did not.
Are we all done with that then?
We are, motion carried.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't have a quote in front of me for this roller, so let me just give you the background, what's going on, and then I'll make a recommendation to you.
Okay.
We have an existing roller. We put about $1,000 worth of parts into it last year. It got us through last year, but we've struggled with it this year. Yeah, Mike went down there and he's like, you realize I think they have a roll cage, and I never even thought about it. So, you know, we're using that roller on hillsides and things of that nature. We shouldn't be. What we'd like to do, we rented one from Woquit, try it out. They had pretty good success with it. They thought it was a good one. $16,000 was the price tag. I don't think we've priced them anywhere else. Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. We
Okay.
haven't priced them anywhere else.
So my thought, and I don't, rollers go up in half-ton size, right? You got a half-ton roller, or 1.5 ton, and a 2 ton, all that stuff. From what I understood, it was 16,000 even, right?
$16,000 even. I have rented it now for almost 3 weeks. What we have rented it for will go against the purchase. They'll take that off of the purchase.
So what I'd like to ask council to do is approve us to purchase a roller up to $16,000 pending a couple of quotations. I'd like for us to at least look and see what else is out there and what the price ranges are for that equivalent model. And if we decide to not entertain anything else, we'll purchase that one from Woolcook and use that rental fees as credit towards that purchase. Does that sound
I have a
kosher?
suggestion.
Okay.
You're gonna get other quotes and you're gonna find other things. Why don't you ask for approval for like 20,000 in case that you run into something that actually justifies paying more. So that way you don't have to come back to do it again. Just ask for a $20,000 limit, because if you find something,
Okay.
that, you know, some feature that may save us money in the long run or make safety or something, then you can go ahead and do that without,
Have to come back.
yeah.
Do we have this budgeted?
Here's what I think. We had budgeted, I think, 23,000 for a curbing machine. We're not buying a curbing machine this year, so I think this slots in there. I did buy a curbing grapple, which was $2,000, so that we could pick up pieces of curbing, order a pallet of curbing, so that we could try to fix the curb out in certain streets and stuff like that. A new process for us, but yeah, I think it has the potential to be a little bit faster than us forming up and curbing ourselves, but so that curbing grapple is going to come out of that curbing equipment line too. So I've got roughly $20,000 left, I think, to be able to.
Somehow I do that.
Just, but, yeah.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve up to, and it's council's pleasure whether you go with 16,000 or 20,000 on the purchase of a roller.
That's profit.
I'll move to approve up to $20,000 for the purchase of a roller.
$500. You say $20,500.
I said 20,000.
Now you realize that's 0.5% of what we just spent on the last 3 days.
Just don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Did you second that, Herb?
Huh?
Did you second that?
I'll
motion?
second that, absolutely.
Okay, any discussion other than from Councilman Bowen?
Whatever I could do to help.
Just kidding.
Just like YouTube in here. Censored.
Okay, we'll have voting by roll call.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen.
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie Gump.
Yes.
Councilman Herb Curtis.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next, emergency demolition remains at 5.5 East Second Street.
All right. So we got the building down. We haven't gotten an invoice or anything or price quote for how much it cost us. Their loader or whatever person was out of the office. Estimates are $10,000 to $20,000, I think, for what that costs to get that down. And that's not a haul off, right? I just got a text from them say $5,300 for the air sampling and the permitting stuff, asbestos and all that is what, so that's a separate charge. I'm not quite sure how we proceed or how we, if this was lined up on top of the hill somewhere, I'd say, let's bid this sucker out and take our time and see who we can get the best rate for. Being next to the river like that, I think there's some risk, you know, if we have a flash of it or something, we could have debris running down the stream and everything else. So I think that kind of puts a pressure on us to act quicker than what gives us the best price in a sense. So what's been discussed to me is roughly that the Triple H Enterprises, and let me back up here a little bit and start over how we got ourselves here with Triple H. So that building was starting to move. We all saw that. We declared emergency. Triple H had actually cold called me that day and left their card. I wasn't here. And so I went down on their website and I said, well, should we do building demolition? I said, you guys, I missed them by about 30 minutes. You still in this area? Yeah, we'll turn around. So they turned around and that's how we got the ball rolling with them. And they said they could be here the next day. And I was really pleased with how they did things. You know, they had safety meetings and they had their guys well coordinated. They had radios and
I met the guy, it stopped. He was very nice.
yeah, I think the foreman is lives on Hackers Creek Road, so here in this county, at the county line. So all in all, I was very, very pleased with that. It just, $10,000, right? So our tact is, with our others, we're gonna try to pay the tipping fees and reduce that 10% overcharge. What they're proposing, they're gonna have 2 flaggers, an excavator with the thumb, pick stuff up, a skid steer to put in the road. We're gonna try to do 6 trucks a day, tracks from Hardman's from what I understood. And they have to line them because the state is making us treat all this as asbestos, so the premium money's going up.
Why, it wasn't burnt?
Well, because inspector can't get into the structure and verify all the places that asbestos could be before it was filled.
Okay, I have a question. This
Sure.
is state tax, the state. Is that you call JB?
We haven't yet, but I think that's a conversation we need to have, but well, everything I've seen, July 1st is the date, so. But I think we've got that one in 218 court, we want to ask about those, see if there's any give backs. So I guess at this point, I don't know how we should proceed in the fact of approving it. I don't have a price for everything. It's even difficult for the contractor, I think, to even estimate something like that, right? I don't know how you do it.
And we just approve
Just
removal.
approve and remove, like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess as far as paying for all this, is this something we want to just tap into ARPA and pay directly from ARPA for this? Or is this something we want to use just our general fund monies with?
Why don't we see how much it is first? What do you think?
I guess from a practical standpoint, from paying the bills, where I'm coming from here. I think we learned this last time when we did the ARPA reporting, it was best to pay the contractor directly. So if he's willing to hold that cost until we get all the costs, then I guess we can have a number and say, hey, this is what it is, let's look at it. Otherwise, I think, you've got to make a payment and maybe we reimburse ourselves or something, but I think that gets a little iffy in the reporting standpoint.
So what are you suggesting?
If,
I just like a
to
decision.
make a
yeah.
determination whether you want to go ahead and use ARPA funding,
Yeah,
because it makes the accounting simpler.
then I can just cut him a check straight from the ARPA account, right? And there's no
And
transfers.
we don't have
and
to
all
go
that
back into the records and pull this and say, oh, yeah, that was associated with this project.
Because when the feds make your report, you gotta put your contractor EIN number and your
Right,
transaction information.
exactly.
And it makes it very complicated when you're running money through different things to make that reporting come out right.
And then you said at a later time we could reimburse yourself.
I think we could, somehow there was some kind of transfer to the general fund. Like I said, when I did this last time with this reporting, it's a huge database and you gotta pick your type of transaction. So if it's a water wastewater project, if you hire a contractor, you gotta select all this stuff and then you gotta put in all their tax information because the federal government wants to make sure they're tracking everything that everybody's doing.
And this is something,
Yeah.
I look at it this way, we got that the federal money that we have, I don't think we should use it to, I mean, we're benefiting the whole city, right?
yeah,
But really, there's one person benefited dramatically. The owner of the building, because he's never gonna be able to pay it back. And so I don't think we should use that money to benefit one or two particular citizens or taxpayers or freeholders. I think we should pull it out of the general fund and go that way.
we might not have it in the general fund, is what he's saying. But I don't know what it is, how much it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's not in our budget, to be honest. I mean, it is, and that's what we're gonna have to revise anyways. And that's coming next meeting, but I think you're probably from Peter to pay Paul, either way you look at it.
Either way, it's the same money, but I think it'd just be easier to bring it out of that and not have to go through all that.
And I mean, if we did the general fund approach, I guess I can look in ARPA and get down the line and say, hey, if we get 3 years down here and we say, we haven't spent this money for some reason, you can always go back and I think hopefully reimburse yourself or something like that.
You may not be able to,
But you're saying it's easier, maybe to go through the
Yes.
ARPA funding, right?
it is.
We just pay the contractor directly, because we've got a separate account, so we go to the bank and write them a check for that invoice.
We're gonna.
Well, and here's another, add another.
We're gonna end up pulling it out for ARPA anyways, to cover it in the budget.
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, you've got a little bit of extra revenue this year, but I think it's gonna cover some of your overages, but you're looking at probably your rainy day fund, that's gonna have to probably go by the wayside, if you just covered it with general fund alone.
I
Another
see
piece of
what you're
this
saying,
is
Randy, but
the red building next to it, I think the code official hasn't made a determination whether that building's got to come down or not.
I seen the roof on that thing.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's probably
Can we ask who owns that?
it's the same tract of property.
Oh,
It's all one piece.
Yeah,
it was the original owner.
well, and let me add you some more information here after today. So Kraus, I hope I'm getting the name right here, but Bernard Metz, okay. The Bernard Metz,
Dwayne, right?
okay, he owned it originally, it was in tax sale. It was sold at the state tax sale, at some point this spring, we found out today, somebody made a claim on that property. Now, in a perfect world, we probably would have notified that person too, but I don't think they've taken deed to it yet or anything of that. It's, you know, when JB came up here and said it's a messed up system, this is the kind of stuff that's messed up. Because people make claims to stuff, they pay your $50, you can start your process, and never finish it, you don't know where they end up. So, you know, with that, I don't know if we reach out to that person and say, where's your interest at here? Yeah, do you want us to take this building down too? I mean, it's not really their call to make, but, you know, there is a little bit of that. What's your intentions here? If you said, hey, I'll come in and fix everything.
Right.
I don't think we're in trouble because we tore down a building that was falling down. If we had to, this one isn't necessarily losing the road at this point, right? It's still pretty straight from the outside foundation standpoint.
No, but we can't tell them that they need to fix it or tear it down.
Yeah. Or they may say, hey, we haven't actually signed the deed yet. We're
We're done?
done, we're moving out of here. So.
Well, then you know.
Yeah, right. So I think that's another chip that's gotta be dealt with, right?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, I will move to,
It's just 1 second before you do that. Nate and I had a discussion last week, and I told him that I was pretty certain that all of council were supportive of the emergency measures that were taken on that building site. But I felt that we probably should have had an emergency meeting just to approve the tear down. So included with the motion that you're getting ready to make, I would appreciate if the first part of your motion would be to approve the emergency measures that were taken at the site and to pay the potential cleanup expenses from whatever revenue source you recommend.
That's kind of that's a hole in our policies and everything else like that. If we get to a situation like that, I don't know. I think from being the administrative side, the administrators should probably have some latitude there to make that call. I think you guys granted it here for all intents and purposes, but there's limits to that, right? And so I don't know what that threshold needs to be or whatnot. But that's something down the line. I think we need to sit down and really put our heads together and say, let's get this teased out for the next event.
I just think it's important to validate your actions to protect you
And I
at this
appreciate
point.
that.
I agree with that. And also I think that we're very comfortable with the decision that you made. You made the right decision.
We try to keep in the loop about it.
Right, exactly. And I think we are making a lot of progress, but we're also, when you say that we might want to take a look at that in the future, you may not always be here. We may not always be here.
Right.
So we need to keep that in mind. And I think as long as we have a good working relationship and know you're gonna make, you know, the call that the situation deems fit, and keep us in the loop, I think we're fine, you know. And if you ever want to call an emergency meeting, I don't think you had time.
City building now?
I don't think that you had time.
Seriously?
Huh?
Like the city building now?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, Councilman Curtis.
all right, let me think about this. again.
Okay.
Okay, I move to approve the emergency measures taken at 5.5 East Second Street on the dilapidated structure and move to use ARPA funds to remove and haul away the debris from the demo.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll have voting by roll call.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen,
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie Gump,
Yes.
and Councilman Herb Curtis.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next, personnel discussion of code official start date.
I'd like to go to, or make a request to enter executive session, but before we do that, I will just make mention that our code official is starting June 1st at this point. That's what we're slated for, but I would like to discuss that arrangement. It deserves a executive session discussed quickly.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Cause one more time out there, didn't it?
All right.
I'm just gonna stay right
Are
here.
we off? Are we off?
Yes.
Okay, motion to
So
exit.
moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Recommendation on personnel code official start date.
I'm recommending Marty Lewis start on June 1st and be approved to be the code official.
At a rate of,
Exempt salary $36,000 a year. Starting out.
I'll make that motion.
is there a second?
No, so-
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? We'll have voting by roll call.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen.
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie Gumps. Councilman Herb Curtis.
Yeah.
Motion carries. Next, personnel discussion of police department recommendation.
Well, I think for our discussion, I think we're going to attempt to negotiate a hardship exemption for an exemption to our travel policy for police cruisers or take-home policy. I guess table that until we have further consideration of what we're looking for you to approve.
But you're done. I moved the table. The discussion on the police department.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Voting by roll call.
Councilwoman Sherry Rogers.
Yes.
Councilman Randy Bowen.
Yes.
Councilwoman Debbie Gumps. Councilman Herb Curtis.
Okay, motion carries. Next, discussion of annexation.
I know we're running short on time, guys, but I provided to you, I redacted some stuff to make this email anonymous, but somebody had asked about annexation. So this is, we had a discussion with an attorney previously about annexing. And this was one of the people we targeted. They said they had reached out to them and said, hey, these are the questions that I think you need to be able to answer, and they're gonna want to see answers to before you walk in. And so I know this council said, hey, we need to approach some people here. And I don't disagree, but I want to kind of go down through this and let you give me your feedback on, services which the city can provide. And number one, police. We're looking at fire most likely. And then, what else?
Snow removal.
Yeah.
We get a street sweeper, we can clean the
Yes.
parking lots
We can clean the parking lot.
Yep.
for a donation or a fee.
Pothole repair.
On private property?
Well, if we
Yeah.
take it in, I mean, would that not be a road? For example, can I just use the marketplace as an
Sure.
example? Like this is the main road going up, would that not become a road?
I'm often wondering when I drive over that huge culvert, if
I
if you
know.
annex them, would that become your problem?
Yes,
I
because
do.
there is a problem. It's
Yes.
sinking
Yeah.
already. There's a dip in the
If
road.
we're smart, but now's the time to come in. Okay.
I mean, I don't know,
You can
I'm
end up
just-
like a
I'm-
big chimney.
Yes.
State come in and take care of it, right?
Okay, so
You
I'm
don't
putting
wanna-
road acquisition, does that
There,
sound?
there,
You
yes,
don't wanna
that's-
fix the road, don't come on.
I know we've talked on that other side, on Staunton Drive, that's been one of the considerations bandied about that. Hey, is there a way for the city to take this street over in a sense, right?
Yeah, and it's into the city.
Yeah.
we can-
Okay,
Plant flowers
Code
in the middle.
enforcement,
Yeah,
if
so
you're
that
gonna
would
interact
be
into that
moving
area.
the old
Huh?
signs.
If you're gonna take that area in with those buildings and stuff, you'd be able to provide code enforcement.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Councilman Bowen's at the top of his game tonight, isn't he?
Come prepared.
taxes and fees to which the store will be subject. B and O, and I haven't turned the city attorney loose on going through with the fine tooth comb, but from our current ordinance in 98, we allow annex businesses to be treated as a new business and to be essentially granted a credit depending on how much revenue they bring in. I'm not aware of us ever doing that for anybody, but I think it's out there on the books. If we want
That it
to
can
grant
be done.
Yeah. And I mean,
For X amount of time.
amount of time, like, I think it was over $1 million.
I was gonna say
revenue.
dollars.
Yeah, $1 million in revenue for 5 years or something like that. You can get 100% of your D&O taxes forgiven. So,
I'm gonna write this down.
yeah, I mean, it's an ordinance. I can provide it to you. You don't have to write it.
You don't,
Huh?
you don't count, your council.
You're already annexed. But
I'm gonna be.
I mean, is council okay with that approach, granting those things? I mean, that's something.
In
We
the
have a
long
low-
run, it's gonna play off.
Yeah.
In the
Well,
long run.
I mean, from my administrative standpoint, I think B&O taxes are a drain on us in the form of administering. I'd love, and I think for the taxpayers, they're thinking, but I'd love for us to be able to kind of do the switcheroo, right? To convince enough to come in where the sales tax is generated.
Then we don't have to have
Yes.
Get rid of it
Get
for
rid of the
everybody.
And the municipal league is very aware, how damaging that is, and they've formed a special task force to study that in municipalities and figure out ways to sustain yourselves without B&O. Because they know it's only a matter of time before the legislature is successful in taking that away.
That didn't even come up this time.
Because you would get, I mean,
It
let's say you get
I
a
know.
major store, the 1% tax will take care of that.
1/4% tax, if you're starting to generate that kind of money, would add up quicker than you could ever imagine. Just 1/4%,
Oh, yeah.
when you're talking about big volume.
I've had a little bit of conversation with Robbie Skinner over in Buchanan about how they just recently enacted, and I said, how do you see that? It's their sales tax is roughly what the revenue of their B&O taxes are. And that's roughly the picture we have. And his suggestion is raise it another cent and sales tax and get rid of B&O tax and forget about it. That's the cleanest approach.
That way, everybody that gets the service is paying, plus people that just come through are getting
Yeah.
whatever benefit they're getting off
Kind
of
of equal.
us being a municipality or whatever services we provide. They're coming through maybe once in a lifetime or maybe once a month. And the contribution that they make is small, but you add all them up and it becomes large.
Agree with you. Real property tax increase, keep us moving here. That's something we can calculate for them very easily on the assessor's website. They show me how to do that, so we can do that. And we'll handle any taxes. I mean, municipal fees, something we'll have to explain to them, but I think that the other thing, I mean, is this fire fee, and I don't think we want to get into that tonight, but we've got to have a special work session at some point to talk about that. I think it needs a night to itself and see what the council's appetite is, but we shouldn't spend much more time with it if you guys don't have that, but there are some ins and outs that we've got to talk you through and let you understand where we stand from our research, where we feel we're at with that, but I think that's something, you know, if we do a first due area like other municipalities have, there's a stark difference between in the municipality and outside. 1.5 times difference allowed the Supreme Court. So that's something you can offer as well.
As far as the fee.
Yeah. So anyways, I probably pump enough on that, but that's something else to think about, okay? And then incentives the city can provide, annexation, of course, B&O relief, our services, with anything else you guys can think of there, incentive wise.
You
You
know,
can't hold sewage hostage.
no, their stage bill is less when they're in the municipality. They get a discount.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one thing.
Okay.
Also, I'm wondering if their insurance would be less if they're first due for fire.
Yeah, their insurance for war.
And
Well, we had that ISO back in, and I posed that question to him. And his feedback was no, because there's like a 4 or 5 mile radius from the fire station by road miles, and those people are all treated the same. And so to me, that spoke to, this was kind of, other places first do this, and if you're out of the city, you pay this much money, which I think I'm okay with. But I thought maybe you look at it as a discount for the people, you don't make the people who are outside that 5 miles an hour, or 5 mile area, because they're getting a lesser service. They're not served by the fire department in the same way that people within that radius are. Does that make sense to you? So,
There's county trucks and city trucks, and after that 5 mile radius, the
Well-
city trucks aren't supposed to go, right?
I'm gonna be difficult to say no. We'll be here all night talking about this. What happens is that the insurance service, rating service is decided within 5 miles, everybody can get there quick, right? Everybody outside that, they're the seller savers at that point. You're not close enough to a fire station to get that reduced insurance rating. So from my standpoint, those guys, yeah, you can, right? And then we can increase them. But at first, you're sitting there looking at these folks and like, we're gonna charge them the same rate that people in the 5 mile radius are, but they're not getting that same benefit from our fire service. So I think that if we're charging for service, we should be looking at, they should have some kind of a little bit of discount there to say, you've got to pay for your fire department, but at the same time, you're not getting the same level of service that people 3 miles outside the city limits are because they're closer. Does that make sense to you? But, I mean, that's all for debate, but that's just my take on it at this point. All right, any other benefits of annexation? And we can see that, so what I'm thinking is we'll take these thoughts and try to draft up a response to this and say, hey, Mr. Attorney, let's sit down and figure this meeting out and make this approach and see where it takes us.
Did you ever, what about the landowners that wanted to come in that were?
Out that way.
Yeah.
We're working on that still. And that's gonna apply to these guys. One of the big issues with this annexation thing is that freeholders is the language that is used by the law. And so when you annex somebody, you've got to give not only, when you voluntarily annex, it's not just the business owner that gets the volunteer right, the property owner, the surface owner, and the mineral rights owners have some say in that stuff too. And so one, you got to figure out who all those people are, and then you've got to notify them and get enough of them on board where they,
Public notice.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
it's a
Public
huge
notice.
mess.
you should wait and do that after I leave, bro.
Yeah. So.
You should.
That's, we've got a willing person, and so in her case, so freeholder is more of like an interest holder, right?
If you have some kind of interest in property, you're a freeholder.
So then you've got on her property, she's got people who have mobile homes, right? They're in this area, and so depending on how you interpret the law, they're kind of got some interest in that, right? So they've got to be on board to it to a certain extent, so. That's why nobody's annexing anyone, honestly. That's the short and
Right.
skinny of it.
They
It's
just
very
start to do
difficult. You gotta go out there and you gotta really hold a lot of hands. To be able to get people to come in, so.
Don't forget the community oneness, the promoting by annexation
Yeah.
when you do your presentation.
What
So-
about
Yes.
the hospital? Work on that.
Well, ever since I've read this B&O rule, I think that they'd be probably pretty close to being some of those credit thresholds, in our thing. So I think we approach them again and say, hey,
I think June 13th is when you're supposed to get their,
certificate of need.
no, whether or not they get their
Okay.
certificate.
Oh, is that right?
You eliminate that B&O and do the sales tax. You're getting like right now 1%. It's no big deal for these big companies to implement that. State's just pulling out, all you gotta do is just
Yeah.
program your hard, yeah. So you don't have any overhead as far as converting over, and you're eliminating, in addition to eliminating the B&O tax and not having them to deal with it. All the people that's in town are benefiting from the elimination of the B&O. So they can be your cheerleaders and going out and talking to them, say, hey, we can help each other.
Here's another thought I wanted to share with you all, is special carve outs of the B&O. And I don't know the exact legalities of this, but I think you can lower your rates and however you want to do that, right? You've got some authority there. One thought I've had is, what are your biggest sales tax generators out that way towards 33? Your big box stores, and then your fast food restaurants, be my guess, right? And I think, we've got to do some internal house looking at it, but what if we exempted prepared food sales from our B&O tax altogether? Does that move the needle enough for those establishments along that pathway to come in? I mean, I don't know what our B&O taxes, we'll have to look at. Yeah, but inside the city, how much revenue we generate from that, so essentially take away our ability to make that revenue. If we could pull those fast food establishments in, and gather their sales tax, I think we probably more than make up for it, but we're gonna study that on our end. but is that something
One
you guys-
aspect in your presentation too, that you'll have to take into account is your classification county. But it's gonna change some of them.
Oh, the
3
property
to 4,
taxes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then you've got to give them some incentive, because they're paying 25% more 4 than they are 3.
I think food is 0.2.
It's always thinking, isn't it?
So,
You're always thinking, aren't you?
Well, I mean, you're paying class 3 and you pay class 4, you're paying 25% more. Class 2, class 4, you're 50%. So I mean, you've got a big piece of property, you're 25%, you're paying a lot more property tax. So you got to give them some incentive to want to pay more property tax. You got to give them a way to make more money to do that. And or give them more services that they have to pay for that they can get by being part of the team. The oneness, community oneness.
Exactly right.
Okay, and next, discussion of summer tent.
They've started.
Okay,
we've got two
I just
people out
wanted an
there.
update.
Yeah, no problem. We've got Sonny Metz down there at the street department, so he's been pretty mechanically inclined, so Mike's had him working on quite a few things down there. And then, Jerry Laddie, who's got a CDL, drove for Mountain State Waste for years and years and years. He's been helping out, and comes in and cleans the building now in the morning times. And he's been jumping in with Chad, riding the street sweeper, and we're kind of using him as a flex. He's like, I'll work whatever hours you want to. So if we got run out of stuff, we send him home, you know, that kind of thing. So
Can I give him a list?
Hmm?
Can I give him a list?
but he's watering flowers.
Is he?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's watering flowers. Yep.
Get the try.
That's right.
Will you have the information ready for us about fire department discussion by June or July?
When do you want to have that discussion?
Well, I was gonna ask for a work session to talk about our focus, since we have one more year left on this term, to really get some strategic plans put into place for the last year. But we also need to have that discussion about the fire department, and I would think two work sessions.
Okay.
So whenever you feel,
Don't forget about our.
Oh, yeah, we may mention that just real quick. Auditors coming, not the week after Memorial Day, but the week after that. So we'll be involved with that, just keep you updated there. We have our budget revision due by June 15th.
Send us some potential dates and we'll figure out a day
okay,
to sit down for the fire.
all right.
I'm gonna try to cut out early on Friday and I'll be back Wednesday morning, riding the train back. My wife's going to Kansas, and so I'll ride the train back from Kansas. I'm riding out with her in her car and then riding the train back. That was the cheapest way I could do it. So it took me a little bit long.
So if you have any emergencies, please contact the vice city manager.
I will be out
Wednesday and we'll be out Tuesday.
Well, and I'll have my phone, so if something comes up, feel free to give me a call, but Judy, yes, Judy is.
I really
I thought you were gone before that, aren't you?
am. I'm here Wednesday.
Are we ready to?
I have one more announcement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I talked about that before, but not everyone was here. Ray with the chamber wanted me to remind everyone there's a ribbon cutting at noon, this Wednesday, the 24th, at the Roanoke Activity Center. Our downtown business, Fat Tire Cycle, is opening up an additional location at Stonewall Resort.
Are we going from our team?
I can't go that day.
I'm trying, I'll have a certificate ready and all that.
Okay. And if you can't go, we'll
I'm not here. You keep looking.
this Wednesday, right? This Wednesday here coming up?
Yes, this Wednesday.
Okay,
We'll make sure somebody's there.
Thank you.
Brandy's going.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Appreciate everybody being here tonight. Yeah, your time. Thank you.
They are, it is very nice. It is very nice.
That's Susie's.
I can't wait